Let's go. All right. Followers of the Grail of the Serpent and whoever else watches that, welcome to a second interview with Yogi Chris. Yogi Chris is going to start teaching yoga for the Grail of the Serpent very soon. And I just want to introduce him to the audience of the Grail of the Serpent and let people know what we got in store for you. Okay? So I can definitely vouch for Chris. I would never associate with anyone I cannot vouch for. I know that he's a true man of honor. He teaches truthfully. What is my definition of a true teacher? Okay, because that's actually a privilege to be a teacher in my mind. Somebody has to earn that title. And I'll tell you what makes a teacher in my world. Okay, a teacher in my world has to be somebody who has a conceptual understanding of something. And conceptual understanding does not happen by studying a fucking book. You can't read for conceptual understanding. You have to get the theory, but then you have to apply it. And in the application, you become the art. You become the spirit of that specific art, okay? And that's what it means when you immerse yourself in something, and that's extremely, extremely, extremely rare, okay? We live in a time, 2021, where everybody has the world's knowledge at their fingertips, okay? I'll tell you what, in ancient times, Alexander the Great, they went on journeys, life-threatening journeys, to get a fraction of the knowledge that we can download within 1 hour, okay, on a hard drive, for sure. And people still can't do it. And I'll tell you why, because they don't immerse themselves in it. And that's the difference. It does not matter how much knowledge is out there, because only a few people are able to apply it and become a representation of that. And I know that Yogi Chris is one of them. And that's why I asked him to do us the honor and teach for the Grail of the Serpent. And, he agreed, which I'm happy about. So before we start this, Chris, how you doing?
Doing really good, man. It's been an adventure living with Arash and the character development and bringing my yoga beingness into the world and making it cooler and cooler. It's very exciting times, and I'm always excited about talking with you because it's a different channel and outlet for what I know outside of my typical conversation. We have, I work exclusively with IMC Nation guys, and I've refused a lot of private one-on-one lessons in the last 6 months or so because it's just a realization that it wasn't worth my time, and I like practicing yoga a lot. But it took away from the business of what I was doing with IMC Nation. Every hour spent teaching private yoga is an hour not growing IMC Nation, outside of just healing that one person or whatever. And, but I've noticed that in the 300 to 350 guys that are like on the inner circle area of things with Arash, there's always that person that, when I see their name or I'm about to message them, in my mind, I know they're a sorcerer, they're a Frank White guy. And it's a whole school of people there. And, so this is a great opportunity, and I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you can explain it to me, because when I look at most yogis, I don't know how to put it, man, but they kind of seem soft. They seem weak. They seem mellow. They seem almost, I don't know, is little faggots the right word? I don't know. Let's call it little faggot. But they seem weak to me. Okay, they can't fucking, like, is it necessary in your opinion? Of course, I have my thought on that too. Okay, but why do you think, or do you think it is necessary to become weak almost if you're a spiritual person? Because that seems to be a notion out there where once you become a spiritual person, you stand for nothing. Everything is just okay. Moral relativism. Everything just goes, except everything. Why do you think that is? And first, and do you think that should be the case?
Well, I don't think that should be the case. It's dangerous for families, women, and children for men to be weak like that. And then dangerous for nations and it's dangerous to free men for men to be, slaves like that. And I think that it's more of the religion of the culture of just self-sacrifice and, a lot of male energy, especially aggression, just aggressiveness, psychological and physical aggressiveness, it gets channeled into the wrong or self-destructive avenues or in ways that it's more easily labeled toxic, because really it's those behaviors that are toxic. It's not the male aggressive energy that's toxic. In the right, harnessed in the right way, that's essential. It's life-giving, it's protective. And so I think naturally, as people like do yoga, stretch, meditate, de-stress, deeper and deeper layers of the mind and the body, you get agitated by less things, you react less, you have a little bit more space between you and your reactions. And so that's easy to perceive as weakness if one is not so easily agitated and high strung like a typical male. But with, like I said in the first talk we had, without philosophy, the simple de-stressing of the body will make someone just docile. They'll become more docile. And that's not intrinsically a bad thing, meaning like it's not bad just I mean, docile has kind of a negative it's not bad to like soften up and lighten up and be more reactionless and let things go through you more. It doesn't have so much mass in you to like resonate with. But we need to add to it, you know, the ideas of how to function as a man. Otherwise, the kind of collective unconscious of the culture will take over as the belief system of the biological being. That's so deeply programmed from birth. And it's so, we're in an ocean of it, that if you just become more yin and receptive, you'll become an imprint of the culture. And so I think that's what we see a lot of yogis in general go towards, and the culture is communistic. So it kind of just, you know, they become women, they become non-gender, binary, non-binary, everyone with same length hair, no makeup, same bathroom.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, so part of, I mean, yesterday I did a lecture and I was teaching about the art of war applied to another dimension, or the dimension of thought. Okay, so if we talk about the three-dimensional physical reality and maybe the fourth dimension of time on top of that, we're talking about the art of war applied to, let's say, the fifth dimension, the dimension of thought, right? And when we go through the world, I really believe that we're in a spiritual war, in a sense where there are different energies, right? It's our own energy, our own focus, and our own goals, right? That's kind of like an energy vector, directed energy, and other people's vectors, other people's focus, which is really the distraction in our lives, right? And we, as people, we have to create, or we have to balance out those distractions. We have to maintain focus on the goal in order to accomplish the goal, right? And that means balancing out all those distractions, and it means that we have to keep moving towards the goal in spite of all of that energy that is moving against us. So, I mean, this is essentially what's going on in life, right? And magic is really a practice where you get a heightened sense of that. And life is essentially overcoming resistance, right? As spiritual beings, we want to create chaos out of, order out of chaos. So that means that we have to balance out a lot of disorder, right? So we are the force that brings order. And it's a direct proportion to the extent, to the amount of order or creation we want to bring to the universe, okay? So the resistance is stronger if the impact is stronger, or the person gets stronger, the resistance gets stronger, right? So in your view, looking at the world through that lens, where is yoga really helpful there? And how could yoga help the person progress in spite of all of these obstacles?
I think there's a lot of, I almost see it like an echo. When something from the outside world triggers something unconscious in me and I don't like it, and it like echoes in my system. And it lingers. And so the ability to relax and let that go obviously is heightened by yoga. And there's a lot of working out of that toxic negativity. That's why one of the dangers of yoga, especially if you get into it, I mean, a danger of yoga but one of the dangers is like overstretching or really punishing your body in different ways. It may not, when we think of overstretching, you might think of a contortionist, but a bodybuilder can overstretch. He doesn't have the range of motion and he pushes too hard to stretch. And it may not even result in like a tear or something like that. it just may result in overly lax ligaments towards the joints. The joints may become unstable, even though he's remained stiff. He may not realize he has lax joints because his range of motion is not so far, but his stretch was so forced and his thought was so tight and bound that the muscle never gave, just the attachment points released, elongated, you stretch that connective tissue. And so how a person is thinking becomes expressed in how they're stretching and how they're doing yoga, how they're breathing. You'll go crazy trying to do breathing practice too soon before you've created some kind of equanimity in the body, because you're just going to be unconsciously breathing these, manipulating your blood system and your breath system with a movie in your head. You'll be going through all kinds of dramas and flaring up memories and imaginings and things, and your body's going to react to that, and you'll just totally agitate your system. So before you get into like controlled breathing, with the exception of like, there's like hyperventilating breathing and fast, rapid breathing and things that it's, you won't get to, you won't destabilize your mind if you keep it to like just a small amount. Other kinds of controlled breathing, even a small amount, you go a little wayward. So you start with postures and stretching. In the postures and stretching practice, you'll notice a purifying of your thoughts in so much as you will think agitating things, at memories, regrets, even just simple like miscommunications. That's what those are. Miscommunications from the day before, from any time in your past. They'll come up and they'll go, and you'll stretch through that. And on the other side of that is more freedom. And you gave yourself a safe space that within your cocoon, within your safe journey, you're journeying for whatever you're doing, 20 minutes, an hour, that you'll come out on the other side more peaceful, not just because you release tension in the muscle, but you process, that's the word. You processed unprocessed feelings, unprocessed thoughts, and without having to do much integrating, you weren't thinking about them, you weren't journaling them, you weren't contemplating them, you were just doing a system of stretching and breathing that allowed your system to naturally process those echoes that are still going in the system. And so you become a more clear vessel on the other side, where everything's more beautiful, man. You see more clearly, you see more what is. There's less of your mind between you and what is. The mind will get a little bit less chaotically in the way of your decisions, and when it does, you'll see it happen more. You'll discover the witness in you naturally through physical movement that will make obvious, at least for some time after you're finished with your yoga practice. It'll make obvious when the mental activity comes in. And that state before the mental activity comes in is contentment. It's just, it's a presence and contentment. And that's what I thought of when you were asking about that. Kind of forgot what the question was, but it was something about, process, the resistance and the power that we have in the world. What's between you and making the right decision and taking the right action is your own resistance to the right action, and maybe also the not knowing of what a right action to do. And so that could be like wisdom and experience, but also your ability to tap in with your imagination to different perspectives. Frank White is like, remote viewing comes to mind when I think of that, but to be able to shift perspective to wherever the solution, whatever perspective has the solution, but then the willingness to take those actions, the resistance inside is where the battle is. That's functional.
Approach from a magical point of view, because cosmology is really this. I mean, everything has to come out of the subtle worlds before it manifests in the physical, right? Either that's an emotional realm or a mental realm, whatever, right? And we are part of all of those dimensions, right? So our physical body and our energy bodies, they're all linked up to that. So what you just said there is really interesting, because in a cold context, what you would do in a situation like that, if you don't know what to do next, how to accomplish a certain goal, how to influence things around you, what you would do is you would literally remove the boundaries of the self in whatever way, a meditation, a trance, whatever, and then you can access those other worlds. And then it is about using this principle of reversal, where when we look at electric energy, it creates magnetism. magnetism can also create electric energy, right? So they're one of the, or two sides of the same coin, right? Tension or friction creates heat energy, right? And through heat you can create friction as well. So through the cause you can create the effect, or rather through the effect you can also create the cause. So the bottom line is this: when you assume that internal state in this expanded awareness where you are no longer just the physical body, you can just assume the position in relative to the universe, and the answer will just come to you. Or sometimes things happen automatically, and that's really what magic is at its core, right? So it all starts with loosening the boundaries of what we consider ourselves. But
man, and sometimes when you focus on the object, there's a lot of tension created around in that focus. And I'm reminded of that old episode of Frasier, if anybody ever watched Frasier. And there was that one episode where like he couldn't ride a bicycle, and he would keep looking at the tree, and then he would ride his bike into the tree. And he couldn't avoid looking at the obstacle, and he kept riding his bike into the thing. And the yoga process, you get out of your own way, but not by focusing on removing the obstacle, just by doing the system. And by doing the system, it's the magic that I am aware of for myself is effortless. It's a natural state. It's an ability to, it's minus the conditioning of the mind. I'm able to do things, and it's when the mind gets involved. But there's so much of our body that we're unconscious of. Like I said in my post, the fear response or the panic response, when you start stretching certain things, you'll feel muscles in your body that you weren't aware of because you never stretched spinal muscles, or went to your end range of motion and took a deep inhale so that the diaphragm or the abdomen stretched, or different thing, neck, like the proximity to your spinal cord, the proximity to your heart and other nerves can just induce a kind of panic that has with it the mental component. So you'll think of something that cause effect that will fit that cause or fit that effect. And if I were to sit and meditate and perfect my viewing, and I believe there would still be parts of my body that I would be unconscious of, that would still be having an effect on my mind. That just because I'm not aware of them doesn't mean that they're not aware of me. Or so, but I think one of the kind of pseudo spiritual traps of that would be the kind of worshiping of the body in a way that takes away from maybe the proper dynamics of life, the survival of the individual, the survival of the family, the survival of the group. So much that, somebody could, let's say, be practicing yoga all day and try to be so enlightened by, examining their toenails, their navel, they're getting so deep into the anatomy of their, how useful is that for what we're doing here? There's a practicality where maybe there's a lot of power, magic, and potency to be found in going so internal and mastering. For what I have found, that's the kind of system that produced these kind of awkward guys that are in yoga. That they're not powerful. They don't not have tremendous insight and awareness on certain things and certain aspects, but because they've sacrificed the dynamics of life and gone for that internal venture, the physical pleasure of it, because it is pleasurable, it fell out of balance with what's happening here. And so this is balance. I think this is very balancing for everybody. I think just a light, healthy yoga practice that's comprehensive and holistic, that can touch on most of the body parts, most of the joints, in all of the ways that, like, the spine doesn't just go forward, back, left, right, twist. It's so complex. It can do a gyration, and to integrate your body and do weight bearing, so the muscles, and then get a little perspiration, not a lot, but then those things are activate everything, and then calm down. So you reset, but with awareness. So you're not falling asleep. You lay down and stay aware while you totally reset. And that's a nice cleansing of all of the systems of the body. And then Frank comes in, and you got so much awareness, man, of the mind and the subtle realms. You're, like I'm learning as I just hear you talk about what I talk about. So I don't claim to have like that level of stuff. I have AZD's tech, and I got a lot of awareness of the body. That's what I do.
Yeah, and this is some very high level stuff, which is definitely helpful. But I want to bring it really, really down to the basics for a second, right? Because a lot of people don't have that much experience, and as such, not a lot of awareness. Which is not talking down on people. It's basically just say everybody's where they're at, right? And a lot of people are. It's very new to them what we're doing here. So one of the most important data's in witchcraft is that you need to make the spell flesh. That's what they say. So the body plays a vital role in your magic. So you have to perceive the end result of the spell in your physical body first. It has to become a biological reality internally first before it can manifest externally. Which brings us back to that the principle of reversal, right? Now, this is something very, very neglected by occultists, specifically in the West. Okay, it's all a mental exercise. Like you said, they're very imbalanced. It's either this or that. It's either systems, diagrams. Actually, there's a so-called occult community. When I think of the occult community, for the most part, these people are social rejects and losers. And what they're doing is they're creating their own subculture and basically validate each other, and based on, they just validate each other, and there's nothing to validate on. But they create their own little group where they can feel at home, which is a little bit pathetic. But at the same time, if you were to meet those people in real life, you would see really a weak individual. So the bottom line is this: you need to bridge the ideas and the physical. You need to bring them together in some way or another. Okay, your magic, if magic is only happening on a piece of paper or in your mind, if it's a fantasy game, it's worth nothing. It is literally nothing. There has to be a concrete physical result. Okay, and yoga is really one of the ways to make that happen. You got to bridge the gap between your mind and the physical world, and the physical body is part of this physical world, and it is the gateway, the entry point for your will to manifest here. Mm-hmm. This is really, really, really underestimated. So they talk of making sigils flesh, or making the ritual flesh, meaning going into a ritual and completely changing your internal state of consciousness to create something, as a result of that. So to what extent has magic helped you developing your imagination?
You meaning yoga? Has yoga helped me develop?
Yes,
and even just as you're talking, the sigil and the symbol, the yoga pose is a shape. It is a geometry. And when you tune into your skeletal system, it becomes very sharp angles, very clear. When you tune into your nervous system, it becomes round angles, if you can imagine what I'm saying. It becomes more of a fluid channel. The alignment is a line in the mente, a line in the mind, alignment. And the yoga pose and the practice of breathing and all of the little nuances of shoulder here, hands there, pressure like this, breathe, see the shape, idealize it. Like all of that's in the imagination. Body scanning is in the imagination. Even just seeing my own bones and muscles. I don't literally see my bones and muscles, but imagining what they look like, where their attachments are, contract, this and that, is an exercise in imagination, I believe. And it's a very grounding, perhaps the most grounding practice in imagination, because that's a literal muscle right there. Like it's the ground, it's mud. This is my mud animated, and I'm imagining it at the same time I'm activating it. At the same time I'm feeling my activation. It's like a very biofeedback kind of system. And then, other nuances of yoga is it's so calming. There's so many different like ways of doing it. A lot of yoga you'll see is just like kind of it's like a fitness kind of thing. And I think from my experience that, I've said it before, the yoga is really, it's in the shavasana. The shavasana is like everything. And yet as you do great shavasana, as I do better meditation, TM, as I achieve greater and greater states of shavasana, I bring that with me into my yoga practice. So it's as if I'm practicing shavasana while I'm practicing postures. If that makes sense, I relax into it. I become effortless. I dissolve. And yet at the same time, I'm holding a form. So I'm a form in the formless. And it's very similar. That's like as you do meditation, you get stiller, you bring your stillness into the world. The world living becomes a meditation of sorts. It's not the same quality. You still have to go back to your meditation and go deeper and deepen that reference and broaden it and everything. But so in that iteration process of doing like shavasana, yoga shavasana, yoga shavasana, yoga shavasana, eventually yoga practice becomes a very calming practice that you're looking to tap in with this kind of incredible effort, this vigor, this focus, so calmly and relaxed and aware of your heartbeat, aware of your breathing, aware of whatever you can be aware of. Even if there's music playing, you're aware of every note and every pause, and you're not trying, you're not focused, you just kind of become very aware in that trance. And it's in a small area. So try to have that experience in the middle of a festival or in the middle of a auditorium or in the, that's the social yoga. How do you get that awareness without becoming socially awkward and violating, but around people? And that's where magic happens, where you're like reading people while you're talking to them, you're meeting them, you're saying magical things. You don't even know how powerful it is. They're talking about your grandma with red hair or whatever, and she was just thinking about her grandma with red hair at the same time, and you're just tapped in. So that's what I think about that.
Yeah, exactly. And see a lot of neophytes when it comes to magic, or even intermediaries. I know a lot of them will, when they hear this, they will be like, okay, well, what does it have to do with what I'm after? Because magic has been, or the occult has been very sensationalized over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's become about what's the word? This demon and this most terrifying demon here, and this creature from hell, and then whatever blood sacrifice and all this stuff, right? Which is like very, very like a tiny fraction of the actual practice. Mm-hmm. What the biggest obstacle is that most occultists experience is they never open their senses to the spirit world. Okay, and the spirits communicate with you in many different ways. They use the soundboard of your nervous system to communicate with you, and those communication can come through multiple different channels. It could be body sensations, it could be auditory, it could be visuals. All of these things play a role because it's all part of your connection to the energies around you, really. And that's my point here. If you want to develop your spiritual senses, first and foremost, you got to develop your internal senses. And that's literally the internally feeling into the body. To what extent are you able to feel into the depths of your limbs? To what extent are you feeling, what's going on in your body? To what extent is your internal communication working, right? Because that's the access point. Mm-hmm. The subtle worlds or the greater universe is accessed by going within first, whether it's through a meditation and whatnot. When you expand your awareness of the self, automatically you're going to expand your awareness of the outer world, right? You were talking about communication with other people. Your communication will increase or expand if you're able to communicate with yourself better, right? So the knowing of the self is essentially knowing of the other. So the answers are within to an extent, right? But what I was trying to ask you, or what I want to ask you is your intuition, to what extent has that increased? And you were just saying something about, saying something in a certain situation, the person feels like you're speaking to them, right? So the feeling of the self, or the increase of the awareness of self, must have done something for your awareness of other people and what's going on within them, right? So how did that work for you?
Well, it's been a continual journey, and it's difficult to separate, like, the social dynamics in that sort of situation. Someone can get to be feeling so content and blissful in their body that they forget to pay attention to how the other person is reacting to what they're saying. And but I don't have the same language that you say, but you I think we talked about it last time, like you become almost more empathetic. If you're out of your own way, when you see someone's reaction, you feel that reaction very clearly. And you'll almost mirror them if you're not careful enough. You forget that you're here, they're there. You just like kind of become what you're looking at. And that's yeah, so you stay vigilant on that. As far as intuition, my awareness of that idea has changed so much as I get more proficient in social dynamics for a similar reason. But as I was saying about the stretching, sometimes you induce a panic effect. Social dynamics can induce panic effect and anxieties and things. And awareness of it all comes back to your perceptions of the situation, what you're telling yourself. And but it's amazing how different situations will trigger parts of the mind and self-talk that you wouldn't be triggered otherwise. And so you wouldn't even know it was there. And
what I'm trying to say though is that let's call the body and its responses to subconscious, and then you got this the conscious mind, which is aware of it all.
Okay.
So do you think that your yogic practice has increased your control over the subconscious responses, where you're able to change your internal reality better? I think that was my question.
Yeah, it'd have to be a yes, because it's definitely not a no, and it's definitely not stayed the same. What it feels like is I have just a natural, easy ability to change myself. All I need is just to be aware of what I want to change. And so I think getting out of my way, so I become more aware of what inside maybe I would change that I don't like you said, the feeling inside. To be aware that one was just tensed up at something is a spiritual advancement that might take someone else lifetimes. They don't even become aware that they tensed up at something. They just react before they're even aware that they got tense. And, and then there's more steps to the evolution. Then you become aware of like what you thought right before you tensed. And there's some dialogue before that, and you catch it sooner. And so you keep moving forward in the cause of it. And so you have more wisdom, more knowledge of cause and effect. You live a better life, a more fluid life. And as far as intuition, I love this word, and I love playing with this word, like tuition on the inside almost, or I think it's easy to mistake whispers of the subconscious mind as intuition. I don't know if that's what you would call it, but let's say, so I have a third word, the unconscious. I think subconscious is like a collective thing, and I think we all tap into that. But there's unconsciousness. I have part of my mind that I'm unconscious of. It's not the subconscious, it's my unconscious part. And so my intuitions may be being fed to me by my unconscious part of my mind. And my intuition, or which I would, in a pure sense, what I would consider pure intuition, would be a reading of the universal subconsciousness. I'm like reading, I'm perceiving what's in the fabric, and it's coming out. I'm a vessel of communication for this deeper knowledge. So true intuition, as I would call it, that's what I would call intuition, is distorted or blurred by an individual's own unconscious or ignorance, let's say, their own ignorances, where they're filtering their intuition through their mind before it comes out. And I think that yoga cleans the mind. I think it makes it it lets more come through from the universal subconscious. I think we get out of our own way more when we're speaking it. And it's a gradual daily whittling away of the personal identity, you could say. And I think that's where people might become unbalanced, because they become a nothing and just a pure channel, but they don't exist. And so it's important to socialize, because we can become easily enlightened in our own echo chamber like that, not realizing that our unconscious is really channeling our decisions and channelizing. Let me use a different word, channelizing, our decisions. So it's, yes, it definitely, yoga makes us gets us closer to a pure intuition. And I think, what I'm doing with Ninth Limb and with Arash, I think a good yoga, and it makes sense with everything you're saying, like that internal communication. Like the more clean I am on the inside, the more able I'm to perceive sensitive differences in the feelings of words and the feelings of what other people say. The better I'll respond. Like if I'm numb or if I'm too tense or if I have poor circulation, so that's a kind of numbness, I may not perceive how it feels when someone says that to me, or how it feels when I say that to someone. And so I miscalibrate because I'm just kind of numb, combined with maybe an ignorance of not knowing what to say or whatever. Because if you know what to say, even if you feel like shit, you can say the right thing. That's the responsibility of maturity, as AZD's taught me. But if you're ignorant and you don't feel bad, now you're in a bad situation where the communication may not go well. So you got to get yourself to feel right. And then at least then, even if you miscommunicate, you'll be able to handle the miscommunications because you have a positive state of mind. So a quick way to feel good is all the sorts of different yoga practices, the cold showers, the breath holding, the quick hyperventilations, the little stretches, even just laying down, relaxing, legs up the wall, reverse the blood flow. When you flood the heart and the brain, everything dilates up there. And it's amazing how much ease and tranquility comes when just the brain eases and the heart eases. And it's just one of those things that a lot of the tension and stress might be just a kind of just a tension in the blood valves or whatever.
Yeah, and I just want to bring this stuff back to the magic practitioners and really explain why what he just said is very, very, very helpful, and the combination of magic, and why I think the combination of magic and yoga is so powerful, because what he was just describing in the way I understood it was really the opening up of the self, right? Now, intuition, the difference between intuition and really these subconscious fragments that are just popping up is really a developed process, so I'm obviously very good at let's call it intuition or readings and communicating with spirits and all of that stuff, but that is the result of honing that ability. And I really believe that the imagination comes before the ability. So imagining to have a certain ability will sooner or later create it, because we are, at the end of the day, the product of the imagination of ourselves, right? So as we put this intention out and as we practice something, it's almost as if these pathways within ourselves are created, down to the very neural pathways that we need to actually do that. So it's almost as if the body and the mind become kind of like a Swiss, Swiss knife. You know what I mean? Like all kinds of different abilities that we can imprint upon ourselves. So really, this is it, where yoga allows the system to loosen so that it is more malleable again. The occult practice of the visualizations, of the rituals and all that stuff, then molds that into something new, a better vessel for what we're actually wanting to do. Okay, so either it's a better seducer, or I don't know if you would call yourself that, but I'm sure that's part of your practice in some way or another, right? Social dynamics, whatever you want to turn your body into a vessel for. Yoga, in my opinion, should be a foundational practice for everyone who wants to become better at something. And it literally does not matter what it is. Okay, you want to become a better businessman, you should do yoga, because that allows you to actually turn yourself into that person. If you want to become a better magician, guess what? Yoga must be a foundational practice for that. If you want to become a better mother, if you want to become a better girlfriend, all of you girls out there, all of you ladies who are going to watch this, all of you are messed up. A lot of you are really, really messed up. Okay, and that's the reason why, because you are stuck in a certain energetic state that needs to change. Okay, become soft again. Yoga can help you with that. So, man, let's take a couple questions, guys. Anyone who wants to ask something? We still got 9 minutes left, and then I'm going to end this here.
Aiden.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So the question that I have here, I actually have two questions here. I would say the first one for Yogi Chris here, is Shavasana the corpse pose usually at the end of the yoga session?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Shavasana. It's like the laying down. the relaxation process, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I like to imagine dying in it.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So that's the Shavasana. And then in terms of Frank, you were mentioning before. I remember you've always mentioned having yoga, having even cardio, and these physical practices really providing benefit for the magical practice. Now the thought of Tai Chi and yoga both came together, and I was wondering some of the similarities or differences in the magical context that you could provide here, some insight.
Look, if you practice both of them, Tai Chi and yoga, of course, that's kind of like a synergistic effect. The actual practice has the same goal, but it's okay. The difference would be yoga is more like peeling off the layers of an onion, right? It's really more intense than Tai Chi. Tai Chi is really you just let it drop like a fruit off a tree when you're ready for it, right? Or yoga forces you kind of into it. I wouldn't say anyone is superior to the other, but it's more it's a different approach to it. But faster results come from yoga for sure. That's there's a reason why yoga has been adopted by so many people, and people feel it right away. The Tai Chi practice doesn't give you strong effects right away. Yoga does. So if you had to pick, go for yoga for sure.
If I can just ask one more thing here, is there a specific type of yoga? Because there's Kundalini yoga, there's all kinds of different kinds of yoga. Which one would be most beneficial, perhaps, in the magical context?
Is that for Frank?
No, that's obviously for you.
Oh,
Either.
well, I don't really know magical contexts very well. I can say that at the highest level and the purest level, all of those yogas are the shit. They're dope. But you're not going to find too many people that do that really legit. And I like to call them kundalinis. And it's very jerking for the body. I think for the most part, I've seen people that have kind of agitated their nervous system and really misalign the joints. I mean, they're not these yogis are not immune to the problems of Western life, sitting and driving and texting and typing, and that was where I came in. I mean, I taught all of those people from 20, 30-year practitioners, studio owners, and things like that. Just my specific thing, which was joint balancing. I did isolated muscle activations. It was what's called a Samyama practice. It's a Sanskrit word that combines the 6th, 7th, 8th limbs of yoga and becomes a very absorptive practice when you lay down, focus on a single muscle, activate it through a very gentle motion, do a biofeedback process where you're like touching it while you're activating it. And so you can feel it, you imagine it. So it's a very imaginative physical. It's the coolest, dopest shit as far as yoga goes, but very few people have the patience to do it unless they're injured, which I was when I learned it. And then I fell in love with the process because that's how I first experienced telepathy, actually. And I was just getting into Frank White too. It was when Frank started with AZD, and it was I remember that Thanksgiving, that Halloween, it's Halloween now. Oh man. Also, it's 2021, so that would have been 2016, so 5 years ago exactly. Which whatever exactly means, because there's leap years and shit. So that's super dope. That I had to develop that for people because they didn't have the patience for it. Private clients that had injuries would learn it, but when I would teach in yoga studios, it was always very profound because it was like teaching applied anatomy to these yoga teachers that never really learned applied anatomy. They learned like to name some muscles and they're parroting some cues and whatever, but they don't know how to like dissect and understand or even integrate. They don't know how to do anything except what they were trained. And to keep them entertained and whatever, I developed it into postures, basically, where I would isolate and activate people's muscles to support, let's say the two main things are going to be the pelvic girdle and the shoulder girdle. And because the pelvis may resituate as you're driving and you're always using your right leg. So the pelvis may torque and there's a bone in the back that's called the sacrum. And so on either side of the sacrum is called the SI joint, sacrum ilium joint. And so a lot of people, I mean, it's just a plight throughout the world. They got sciatica or low back pain, but it's really pelvis pain. And so I would teach how to isolate a few muscles around the pelvis, and that would just kind of resituate the thing. And then I would teach them postures, giving them all of the commands and cues for the activation so that they could learn to use those muscles in the posture. This is something I did in my process, because my process was cure my woes and sorrows of life by diving into my yoga practice, and then afterwards flip through a picture book of muscles and memorize it. That was like, and that's what I did and nobody's going to go through that process to learn. So I had to teach it like in that way. Then, I had learned that from a guy that we had a falling out. He ended up kind of worshiping John of God, who later we found out was a pedophile, human trafficking scum down in Brazil. And, I floated and taught and learned from different teachers, but the best system that I found was another guy in Houston named Robert Bustani. He's like 70 years old. He was an old physicist and turned yogi. And he's really tapped in with this Himalayan yoga stuff. Now he's really awkward like lots of guys, and he's kind of creepy around girls like lots of guys. So whatever. But his what he does, I was so uniquely able to pick it up because he does multi-muscle activation movements, but people never had the background of doing single muscle activation. So when I'm doing these motions, I'm fucking killing it, man. And I'm learning I'm learning his movements, you know, how to rotate, because it's difficult to like rotate different limbs in different directions and then pull yourself. And that's how he's releasing the spine. And so it's really tremendous. There's a lot of flaring up in energy that goes up the spine, which is like what you would do with Kundalini yoga and whatever, pranayama and different things. I'm also tapped in with a really deep pranayama practice that comes from Himalayas. The oldest Ashtanga teacher alive, his name is BNS Iyengar. He's in his 90s, and I learned directly from him when I was in India. And the long answer, besides me bragging about myself, is you want to know and like the guy you're learning from, and follow their advice. If you're going to learn from somebody at a distance remotely, not me. If it was me, then you have my advice. But if you're going to learn from somebody you don't know, then then the best thing to do is probably just dabble. Fuck it. Just dabble until you find what you like, that you resonate with. There's going to be a lot of different styles. I think one of the most easy, accessible styles is Bikram, because I think that pretty much everybody can do it, except for people that just can't stand up and get on the ground. If you're so old or broken that you can't get up and off the ground, then what you need is essentially yoga therapy or some kind of restorative yoga. And at an advanced level, restorative yoga teachers are yoga therapists. So they're like esoteric physical therapists, or they don't use physical therapy per se, but they are a more gentle form of physical therapy. And then just depending on your constitution, like if you like calisthenics, then you're probably like some kind of power yoga. If you're more into just like an overall health and wellness, like positive effect, you just like some vinyasa yoga. That's where you're probably going to find the most chicks around your dating age. Then, yin yoga is really nice. If you really like the class, I think if you really like the class, I don't have the patience for yin yoga, like on my own personal thing. I think it's just not for me, but that's a personal disposition. You know, I like going to yin yoga classes. And there's going to be a lot of like local name stuff, people that have branded their name or little offshoots of things. And in that sense, I think it's probably just going to keep going downhill as far as quality. It'll be rare. You might find some people that are pretty outstanding. I'm pretty disappointed with the yoga community as far as their skill. And it's rare gems. The people I learned yoga from in Oklahoma are amazing. They like, I called 2,000 yoga studios. I toured a bunch all over the country. And the people in Oklahoma that I happened to learn from, like in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, were fucking amazing. They were worshiping a pedophile in Brazil, so that ended up not working out. But their body awareness, their awareness of even how to apply Sanskrit, and just their dedication to what they thought was their yoga, like they were all about it. And that was dope, because everybody else is kind of about it in a cool way. They're trying to be like that cool. I mean, it's the same thing like Frank was saying about the occult communities. They're like, a lot of them are just like social rejects or whatever, or a lot of them are really wounded people. And so they're finding some sort of safety in a spiritual community that preaches non-harm and treats everybody equally, so they can kind of feel safe, part of a family that they never really maybe felt. But then the problem is, then you get like what happened in Tallahassee, where, a guy comes in and shoots up the place because he got rejected by one of the girls in the place or whatever. And that happens to a yoga studio. So you got to have awareness of like genders and things like that. And that is, that's a different subject. I don't want to go on too long. So I think what I'll teach in the sorcery series, it's cool name. It's going to be exactly what I do for myself, to just balance myself and I know that there's going to be certain things that are just going to feel so good. You are going to find ecstasy in the moment, just manipulating certain things in your body. And it's going to be a really good thing for sure.
Yeah. I mean, two things about this. This is exactly how I would want you to teach this. For real. Like, why come up with something ahead of time? I mean, see, if an art is yours, if you're really using it, if you really made it your own, you will use it to overcome life's challenges, right? It was a while ago, and I had the school together with Kevin Gentry, the pimp, right?
Yeah.
And he was some of the students asked me something about it, and I was like, hey, just ask the spirits and do a spell, right? And he's like, okay, wow, that's incredible, because I would have used my skills as a pimp, which is conversation, to solve that problem somewhere or another. And that's really the point. See, life's challenges are going to be approached by whatever has become your means of survival, your favorite means of survival, right? So if you're not using yoga to overcome life's challenges on a daily basis, I wouldn't consider you a yogi. Okay, it's not that I don't practice yoga, but yoga is not my go-to method to deal with life. If that
It's
makes
a cool way to
sense.
describe it. That's nice. Thanks for that.
Exactly. So I would want you to teach it like that, and I want people to see it applied in that way, because that's really what yoga is. It's not about some motherfucker sitting cross-legged or the yoga lotus position and talking about abstract principles. It's how the fuck do you apply it to this physical experience that we're having right now, right? And yeah, really, that's really what it's about. Second, what is it that I want us to talk about? I think the second point that I wanted to make is oh, fuck it. Can't be that important if I forgot it. Okay, so we're gonna begin. Did we say December or January? I think it was December, right?
Oh, whenever you'd like. I think we were talking about doing 3 of these, and this is the second one. And I think you told me January, and we have the syllabus. We're kind of, in my reflections on this, like all my reflections on the last one, it just calibrates like the direction we're going in. So one more I think is good. And also for awareness and whatever. And really, whenever we want to start, the holiday season can be chaotic for people. Yeah. Catching it right after that, right around New Year's, is usually a good, safe thing to do.
Yeah, let's begin in January. And I mean, that gives us plenty of time to prepare.
Man, that's so long away. Man, that's like 9 weeks away.
That's 2 months. Whatever. Let's do another call, or maybe 2. Let's gather some people. Let's promote this a little bit. I really want people to have this stuff. And this is what I'm about to say now is solely for the magical practitioners, the people that practice magic. Listen, I'm no longer going to talk about spirits and demons and that stuff. I'm only going to do that in my order. I'm going to do that in my inner circle of students, people that I really trust. Okay, because most people I just can't trust with this knowledge anymore. Okay, this stuff is super dangerous, and in the wrong hands, people will fuck themselves up with it. Okay, now the occult is real, spirits are real, but you need to know how to approach them, how to work with them. And if you're not psychologically stable, this stuff is more likely to destroy you than to help you. So you have to approach it in a certain way. And I only want to teach people that I really trust with this. Okay, so you're only going to, from now on, you're only going to learn about spirits and how to work with them in my inner circle. Okay, for the rest, I'm going to give you some, teachings about the mind, how to deal with your energy, maybe how to protect you spiritually and the banishings and whatnot. Okay, but I'm never going to teach you how to actually work with spirits. Okay, because that requires a certain level of trust. And on the other hand, on another note, you were talking about being lucky, being taught by these incredible people in Oregon, right? Was it Oregon? Yeah.
I feel lucky to be on the stream. When you were talking earlier about like how good your intuition is and everything, I'm like, man, and he had intuition to like ask me to teach yoga. That means we're doing something right here.
Yeah, what I'm saying is it's you always have to, qualify for that. And when I say qualify, it does not mean that you go through certain tests, where you write shit down and get an A on the test. What I'm talking about is the universe will test you. You have to link up to the chi light, if you will. We have an unlimited amount of states of consciousness available to us. And one specific state of consciousness links us up with a specific frequency. And this is where we find the right teachers. We find the real deal. So it is the person. They say that when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? And that's true. The student qualifies internally by their vibration. They get connected to the right people. It's not that there aren't good teachers out there. If you're not finding good teachers out there, ladies and gentlemen, it's about you. It's your fault. Okay? It's not that there aren't great teachers out there, but you're not linking up with them vibrationally. It's a vibrational universe. How do you earn anything in this universe spiritually? Having honor. Honor is discipline, it's respect, and it's loyalty. These things need to be there. And you need to honor your art first and foremost, and then you need to honor your teacher too. Most people don't have that, you see what I mean? And this is what I really want to leave people with. I have every trust in Yogi Chris that he's going to teach an amazing class. I'm really proud to have him on there. Thank you for doing this.
Welcome.
And yeah, do you have anything to add?
No, it's great. It's even a great, like you were leading into like lineage and things like that. It's even a great opportunity for me to shout out my teachers and whatever. So that's all super cool, spread the good word. And yeah, let's get to it. I'll see you all in the next stream. And typical greeting would, or exit, goodbye would be namaste, right? Namaste.
Be well.
Yeah.